new champions here in Oceania as Direwolves will represent the OPL at MSI 2017.
We got here.
Медведи из Virtus Pro, чемпионы СНГ, впервые для организации.
Вы думаете, это будет легко?
Lion Gaming, 8 títulos, 8 veces campeones de Latinoamérica Norte.
Somos los mejores en nuestra región.
นี่ครับผมนะแชมเปี้ยนของเราในสปริงซีซั่นนี้นะครับกาลิน่าพรีเมียร์ลีก 2017
Nhưng đối với chúng tôi
この LJL2017 スプリングスピリット
まだまだ足りない
A Red é campeã do primeiro split do CBLOL.
É hora de botar pra respeitar.
Supermassive'den çok iddia edici bir 3. oyun izledik. 4. oyunda yine ilk 2 oyunu benzetmeyen
Ama sadece biri hükmedecek.
Welcome everyone to the 2017 MSI play-in stage. There are 3 more spaces up for grabs at the MSI group stage, and we've got 10 different regions looking to make their claim. You're getting a look at the Estúdios Quanta in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where the crowd is absolutely electric, which is expected of any Brazilian crowd. The Southern Hemisphere plays host to this tournament this year. I'm James Dash Patterson. Joining me on the analyst desk today are Andrew Vedius Day and Mark Zimmerman. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm doing well. I had a breakfast burrito this morning, and it was wonderful.
Welcome to North America.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions. Like, do you like the desk more? How does all of it compare? I mean,
Well-
we stand here a little closer together.
Yeah, it's very intimate. That's lovely. You guys have a very nice space here. You have a giant TV, which is cool.
And we're going to utilize that to break down this tournament.
The only problem is we have James. That's like the
I
one
mean,
thing you kind of have to
he's
deal
not
with.
as blonde
Day
as
1 of
Ifya.
MSI, you're going to start throwing
It's been
shade,
I
Mark?
haven't seen you in a little while.
Come on, man, we got 4 days
You
of
know
this.
I missed you.
We got 4 days of this.
how I
Don't
missed
start
you.
with
I
me
gotta-
now. All right, let's begin with a review of the play-in stage and what teams will have to do to make it to the MSI group stage. Round 1 of play-ins begin today with our 8 teams sorted into 2 groups. Group A consists of CBLOL's Red Canids, Oceania's Direwolves, Turkey's Supermassive, and hailing from Japan, we have Rampage. With Group B composed of Russia's Virtus Pro, LLN's Lion Gaming, Vietnam's Gigabyte Marines, and CLS's Azurus Gaming. After a double round robin of best of ones, the winner of each group will promote to round 2 of the play-in stage, where they will be randomly assigned against NA's TSM or LMS's Flash Wolves. After winning a best of 5 against their opponents, winners from round 2 move into the group stage, with the losers moving on to round 3. Round 3 pits the losers of those matches in a final best of 5, with the winner claiming the last spot in the MSI group stage. Now, that was a lot of information to absorb, but I'm going to turn to you two to give us a little insight on these teams. Right on the outset, a lot of people have been looking at Group A as the stronger of the 2 groups.
It certainly seems that way just because of the pedigree that you have in some of the players. Like Red Canids, they're very well known internationally. You also have Supermassive debuting at MSI last split, having a reasonable amount of success, being able to take down COG. So I feel like that just when you look at the group as a whole, there are a lot of standout individual performers that people or analysts are expected highly from.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the big thing, because when you're playing in these kind of
games, it's a lot about like the star players who's going to make the big play. They're going to be a lot scrappier than a lot of the games you're used to seeing, and if you're able to individually outplay someone, that's a big opening for your team.
Right, and then you talk about international experience, you know, and acclaim and expectation for each of these teams, and it varies across the board. If we get more specifically into the teams themselves, let's start with Red Canids, the hometown favorites here from Brazil. Crazy aggressive team.
Yeah, these guys like to fight. They like to build their leads in the early game by finding these picks, forcing these snowballs, and utilizing the early game powerhouse of champions like Elise and Lee Sin from their jungler to really net themselves some early leads and run away with the game.
And I really like the comps, like you said, the pick focus that you see. A lot of Ahri, a lot of Syndra, a lot of Elise, playing things like Thresh, and then usually tanks in the top lane. I like their team comps a lot, and they go for this kind of group up and try and catch people out.
Yeah, having upset Cade Stars there in the finals, now representing Brazil. They'll be in the first match of the day. Let's talk about some other teams, perhaps one that might match their aggression in the Direwolves, and these guys have no shortage of confidence to go along with their aggression.
I cannot wait to see the Direwolves play because there is so much enthusiasm from
That's
the
a
team.
good word for it. Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Polite, right?
Confidence, overconfidence, enthusiasm.
But it's the fact that when you look historically at Oceania's performance, you'd say, well, okay, maybe you're being a little overconfident, but there's a lot of pressure on these guys from the organization, from the support that they have behind them. There are some level of expectations, not only from their region, but from the support that they have from the organization in order for them to perform.
A fair amount of investment into the teams themselves, and they've been very outspoken, saying that they're only afraid of the Koreans, and yet if they're going to face the Koreans, that's many days, if not weeks, away from now.
At least 3 rounds of this tournament to go. That's not going to be until the actual MSI play stage, so they got a long play to go. I hope they're not looking past their actual opponents right now in Group A.
Exactly. 2 more in Group A. First up, Supermassive. A lot of people will remember them from last year's MSI performance. Dumbledoge and the rest of the crew. First blooding Faker here. Who could forget?
Yeah, and I think Dumbledoge is a good guy to point out because we're in a meta where a lot of people are talking about how hard it is to shine with playing Lulu and Karma so much, but he was able to pick up the MVP in the finals of the series that they won to get here, and I think that's a huge thing to have a playmaker at the support position, and especially with some of the changes that we might be talking about in a little bit, I think that's going to be very good for him.
Yeah, we'll get into patch stuff in just a moment and how it might affect all of these teams, but to close out Group A, Rampage, our team representing the LJL from Japan.
And this is my dark horse of the group. I know that it's Mark Z's as well.
Stop stealing my dark horse.
Hey, it wasn't stolen. I planned this well in advance. These guys are a really exciting team to watch, largely because of their jungler, Tussle. This guy loves to make plays. It can not only be super hyper-aggressive in the early game, but also knows how to team fight, knows how to catch his opponents off guard, and I remember his Lee Sin from the International Wildcard Qualifiers. This guy just performed above and beyond, and now that they've upgraded their mid and AD carry from previous roster iterations, I am really excited to see what this team can pull out.
And the thing I liked about them a lot was when I was watching all the teams' finals, I felt like they were playing a lot more controlled style that you like to see out of some of the more major regions, and they were using their champions for going for team-oriented plays versus a lot of skirmishing that you tend to see in some of the other teams. And I think that's something that they might have an advantage over when you're playing so many teams, having like a unique, controlled style where you're not going to get totally crazy every single game. It's going to help them a lot.
Right, Tussle feels reminiscent of someone like Karsa. In the past, we've looked at the Flash Wolves and said that's one of the playmakers on the team. Along with Maple, you're looking for him to really get the team going. And if Rampage is going to have a shot at qualifying out of this group, it could be off of his back.
And remember that this guy did come in from Korea. He joined the team very early on, back in 2015. He's been with the organization for a very long time. And the whole idea of this roster is to enable him to succeed, him along with Dara. So these guys, they're not just some random Korean imports that join the team hoping that this Korean success can thrive. They are actually superstar talents that have built with this team, and I'm expecting a lot from them.
So you guys talk about your dark horse, and of course, with all these teams kind of coming in from different regions and having not played against each other, who's your front runner in Group A?
I think it has to be the Red Canids. I think you talk about Brazil being one of the best regions generally in terms of the ones not playing in the major regions. They always have a good performance, and the way that they got here, I think, was very impressive as well when they 3-1 Cade Stars and finally kind of upsetting them as the #1 team in Brazil.
Yeah, and we also have the superstars, right? Players like PRTT, everyone's excited to see. Tokka is a bit of a legendary mid laner in the CB LoL. I think there are a lot of high expectations for him, and I think that just across the board, when you look at the individuals on this lineup, you just expect them to be slightly stronger than some of the competition that they have in Group A.
Absolutely. We do have to keep in mind that these players are also dealing with a patch change. 7.8 to 7, or 7.7 to 7.8 is what we've landed on here. Primarily, the big change is that Galio's been introduced to the pool, along with some minor nerfs and buffs to meta champions.
Right, so obviously with Galio, he's a champion that when he came out was kind of broken. Everyone was very upset about that, and he was being played in 4 different positions because everyone just knew he was good, not exactly sure how to use him. Kind of been figured out a little bit more now, and he often requires some kind of setup. So you see people running Camille with it or an Amumu or something to give him that kind of free ultimate onto a team fight. But even with that said, a lot of those things are kind of dropping off in meta. They're not super strong right now, so it might be hard to really fit him into a team comp.
The big thing for me is the ability to coordinate with him. I think it requires a lot of skill and communication in order to properly utilize his kit. But also, like, I think he's very telegraphed as well. A lot of his plays seem very obvious to read, so there's a lot of room for outplay. So I think if a team is going to bring it out, they will have definitely spent a lot of time.
I was going to say, it's going to be a matter of practice, how much time those teams have put into the champion. Let's look at some of these nerfs and buffs. As was mentioned, a lot of them are hitting already meta champions in very minor ways, right? We've got, small nerfs to Malzahar, Graves, Rengar, the like, which could make that jungle pool very interesting. So to your point around the kind of style that Red Canids plays with Elise loving to get ahead in that fashion, reduced MR on the Graves could make her a stronger pick.
Right, and I think it's a little scary for some of the other teams that rely a lot on their jungler to make stuff happen, like Tussle, like Fire. These guys are very aggressive, and then you're going to lose out on power picks like a Rengar, like a Graves. I mean, Lee is still good, Elise, but then you start seeing maybe Ivern become one of the best junglers, which I don't think is exactly the style they're looking for.
For me, I'm really keeping my eyes on this guy right here, casting very small buffs coming in on 7.7, but the changes that they have made have really made his laning phase a lot stronger, and when you look at some of the mid laners that we have here in the play-ins who like these split pushes, who like these assassins, he's going to be one of the big power picks that people are going to look towards.
And then, of course, the Bard. That's the last thing we want to hit, as was mentioned with Dumbledore. Just one of his primary picks, always has been a favorite for him. Of course, there are other Bard players in the tournament itself, but kind of maybe opening up that roaming potential for supports could really make for some interesting games, especially given that we have best of ones, and it's not best of 5.
Right, I mean, that's the big thing, is that you can do some crazy stuff with Bard. We've seen some insane level 1 First Bloods if you take your E right away and start getting in through the back line, through these weird paths that don't really exist. The roaming that comes in with it, if it's going to be a scrappy game, Bard is a great champion for being able to join in fights faster than a lot of other champions.
Yeah, so then let's talk about also, too, this best-of-1 format, right, and how it differs from, say, the group stage when you're playing in those best-of-5s, and you kind of have the option or the ability to drop a game and readjust. Here, every game matters that much more, reminiscent of the group stages for Worlds, and so it's going to put that much more importance on the strategy and the champion picks and how they affect the game.
And I think that's a big thing when you talk about how a level 1 in a best-of-5, if you do something kind of cheesy, it can get you an advantage. It's worth going for, but it's not going to be the thing that really gets you out of that whole situation. Whereas that can matter a lot in best-of-1 kind of group stage, where if you pick up 1 extra win, that might be all you need. And then there's some crazy champ picks as well. We've seen some support Camille, some support brands by some of these teams, so you might see some crazy stuff today.
What I'm most excited for is the conflict of styles that we're likely going to see, because you have so many different regions who have so many different metas, where some teams will prioritize certain champions over others. You have certain teams who just focus on things like aggressive playstyles, passive playstyles. There are going to be all these different variations, and my biggest wonder is whether or not teams are just going to stick to comfort, or whether or not they're going to try and play to their opponent, and whatever is going to succeed the best.
Minutes away from finding out. Now, taking to the stage today are the members of Group A for their first round robin. That means every team in the group will play 3 games today, giving us 6 games total. It all starts with Brazil's Red Canids taking on OPL's Dire Wolves, followed by TCL's Supermassive against Japan's Rampage. During MSI only, you can unlock the 2017 MSI Conqueror Karma bundle. With the bundle, you unlock the commemorative ward skin, plus a border and an icon that's exclusive to MSI 2017, with 25% of all purchases being added to the MSI prize pool. Conqueror Karma is on sale now, so make sure to pick her up anytime between now and May 24th before she goes back into the Legacy Vault. It's time now, though, to send it over to our casters to get us into the first game of the day.
Thank you very much, Dash. Hello, everybody. I am Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and I am thrilled to be casting my first international tournament alongside just the flyest fella I know, Aiden Zyrene Moon. How you doing, my friend?
Do you know a lot of people?
I know quite a few people.
Okay,
I'll have you know.
okay,
That is
yeah.
a distinct honor.
Thank you. Yeah, it was relative, of course, but now that I know, thank you.
We are in there, and it's time to begin our day with CB Lul's Red Canids versus OPL's Dire Wolves to set up this matchup. Let's check out the starting lineups. On the blue side, we've got the Red Canids with Robo in the top lane, Napon in the jungle, Talkers mid, BRTT bottom, Dude supporting, and Coach Brokenshard.
And of course, on the red side will be the OPL representatives, Dire Wolves. In the top lane will be Chippies, Surenfire in the jungle, Fantix mid, King bot, and support Destiny with Coach Sharp.
For Dire Wolves, this is the first time this team has appeared internationally.
Exactly. OCE has had 3 teams represent them. This is the first time that the Dire Wolves have actually won the OPL and the first time that they will be able to represent their region here. And it was interesting because they had a lot of confidence. They claimed that they were going to win against everyone but the Koreans. There was a little bit of an asterisk there where they were like, hold on, let's not get completely crazy. But I will say that immediately they have to face one of the strongest play-in teams right off the bat with Brazil and the Red Canids.
Not only are the Red Canids an incredibly tough opponent, but they're also the opponent that has the support of the hometown crowd here in Brazil.
Exactly. So the Dire Wolves, not only do they have to go against Brazil, they have to go against the crowd. So they have to kind of back up that tough talk that they had. But for Brazil, for the Red Canids, there's a lot of pressure coming into this matchup as well. Sure, they have the hometown crowd behind them, but this matchup in particular, historically, OCE has actually upset Brazil multiple times at wildcard events. And so it's kind of a meme at this point where Brazil is a better overall region in terms of their performance, but they'll drop games to OCE. So we'll see what happens today. But for the Red Canids, they're also a new organization. They have a lot of familiar faces like BRTT and Talkers that a lot of people can be like, okay, I've seen those guys internationally before. But this organization was INTZ Red, and then in 2016, they had to change. They became the Red Canids. And then from there, they had a really, really, really bad 2016. In 2016, the Red Canids placed 6th, 5th, 7th, and then 7th again. We're in the promotion tournament, and there's only 8 teams in that league. And then they ended up having a complete rebuilding at the beginning of this year in 2017. And now they're here representing Brazil with people like BRTT.
And, you know, BRTT going to be going up against someone who's no slouch in his own region, facing off against King, a player who's got the number 1, number 2, and number 3 spots on the Oceania Challenger ladder all to himself.
Absolutely ridiculous player. King is actually touted as being a mechanical prodigy, but we've yet to see him internationally. So it's that whole big fish, little pond right now for the OCE guys. Whereas BRTT, he has actually had some international performances before. If you go back to Pain Gaming, when he was able to beat Double Lift, and then the memes kind of spawned from there.
Yeah.
Then they haven't died just yet. But BRTT had a pretty bad 2016, where he was on the sub roster, or at least the sub for a team, and he barely saw any play. It was almost a full year of him being on the bench. And then this year got picked up for the Red Canids, came back, had a great resurgence, but also spent a little bit of time swapping back and forth between him and Saucy, who's the support, or the sub for the team.
And that point that you made about being a big fish in a small pond, that kind of a scenario, that kind of a reality is true for many of these teams that come from regions that are competing now in the play-ins, that are trying to earn their spot as a legitimate team on a world stage, on a competitive international scene. And this is their chance to prove it. This is everybody's chance to make a statement and come out swinging. And in the first game of play-ins, the first game of the entirety of MSI, both these teams want to come out with that 1-0.
Exactly. You want to, as Brazil, because you want to be able to kind of upset the upset and make sure it doesn't happen, have the hometown crowd behind you the whole time. Whereas OCE, they want to be able to back up the talk that they had. They want to come in with that strong performance. And these are best of ones. Anything can happen in these, but also you only play 6 games. So these 6, every single one matters, but also typically in group stages where it's like Group A, Group B, and they have 4 teams, you'll see like 2 people advance. Only the top team from each group advances. So you have to be number 1. You don't want to drop any games at any point and play from behind. You need that number 1 spot because you're the one who moves on from these groups.
Yeah, a lot of times, speaking of that number 1 and number 2, you know, you're looking at things where you have groups like these and you're thinking, okay, yeah, you got a clear front runner, but then these 2 teams are still competing for that number 2 spot, and that's where the real contest is. There's no contest for number 2 and number 3 right now. It's just who gets on the plane first to go home.
Exactly.
You got to be number 1 or you're done.
Exactly. So if you have number 1, you move on, and then you'll play either the NA or the LMS region to see. And then from there, it's like a best of 5. You have to win at least 1 of 2. But that's, you know, next week. We won't be talking too much about that.
Right.
This is what matters right now, is these moments where you have that champion select coming in. You have to kind of pull out all the stops. You have to kind of surprise people. You also have to have a really solid strategy. And you talked about big fish, small pond. Well, a lot of these guys are exactly that, like we've said multiple times now, where Every time I talk to an analyst from the region, they're like, this guy is mechanically gifted. He's so good. He's great. They have great macro decision. But it's always relative, right? It's always relative to who you're playing against. If you've dominated your region, you may look good there, but it's how you actually extrapolate that and how it looks against the rest of the world. And that's why these teams are in the play-ins right now, because historically, they haven't had that same top level.
Yeah, the world's a pretty big place, and sometimes some of the teams you find out there in the far reaches of it can be pretty damn intimidating.
But then you also have teams like Albus Nox Luna that come out actually able to smash a group stage because they have a whole bunch of surprising picks. And as we see here, the two teams coming onto stage, the Direwolves and the Red Canids fighting for top dog.
Onto the stage they walk at the same time, showing themselves to the crowd. The Brazil team, you know they've got the fans cheering for them, the hometown crowd, but Surenfire
soaking it up.
He knows that he's got fans there too. Direwolves proud to be representing Oceania this time. Want to make sure that they make as much of an impact as they can, but you can see those Thundersticks being clamored.
Exactly. And Direwolves, you talked about Surenfire. He's somebody you have to watch out for here because he was in NA Challenger Series. I remember him not actually making it to the playoffs there, but everybody was saying he's actually pretty damn good. High in Korean solo queue, I believe peaked at like top 10.
Top 15 or something.
Yeah,
I know it was at least top 15, yeah.
So he was at least top 15 there, but also in NA solo queue, peaked about the same area. And so he's very mechanically gifted as a jungler, and he's kind of the guy who ignites a lot of the fire for the OCE team.
And I really want to see who does step up as the playmakers in these kinds of games. Who is able to make sure that they keep their cool, keep collected, and have a solid game plan heading into these matches. Because that's one thing that you often see sometimes is if a team goes into one of these international levels of competition and they don't have a way to deal with the superior teams that they're going up against. Maybe your opponents have better mechanics than you. Maybe you're up against a team that's just generally more well-rounded, then you've got to have some kind of a better strategy. You've got to have some way to outplay that.
Exactly, and it has to be fast as well because you're playing 3 games today. You're playing half of your games. You get a day break tomorrow for Group A, and then you come back on Sunday to finish your last 3. So you have to have mid-series, and they're only 1-game series, adaptations to adapt strategy to a team that you aren't even playing anymore.
Right.
So if you lose here, you have to go back to the drawing board, figure out what went wrong, try it against a different team that may even be better than your previous opponents.
Yeah, and it's not even like you can adapt those strategies, like you said, to the same team because you're not going up against the same team multiple times. You're playing 3 games today against a different opponent each and every time, so you've got to have done your research. You've got to be thinking, look, okay, our early game might have failed in game number 1, but up in game number 2, our opponents are even more early game heavy, so we've got to overcompensate to make up for that.
Exactly. So we'll talk a little bit now about the 2 teams. We'll talk about the CB LOL team, the Red Canids. They went 17-4 throughout their split and ended up finishing in first place to get here. And like I said, it was the rebuilding, it was the rebirth for a lot of these guys. BRTT, now 2-time CB LOL champion. Talkers also bringing home multiple titles for himself. You might remember him from Worlds. Was on INTZ's team that took a game, had a little bit of hype behind them, and then wasn't able to live up to it after that.
And their opponents in the Direwolves, you're talking about the Canids having a good record throughout their regular season. The Direwolves going 18-5 on their game record, finishing first with a very dominant performance throughout their regular split in the Oceanic OPL. These are definitely not guys that don't deserve to be here because they time and again showed up and proved themselves to be the superior team this split in the OPL. But like you mentioned, this is a team especially that when fans talk about their players and talk about what makes them good, the word mechanics comes up time and again.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I talk to somebody who's an expert in the region, they'll say somebody like King, aggressive, mechanical prodigy. There's a reason he's number 1 through 3 on the Challenger ladder. His team fighting shows that as well. Whereas Destiny, his support, has some great laning strengths. And he talks a lot during the games. Whereas Fantic in the mid, he's kind of been the top 3 mid of the region, but always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Right. Trying to get that number 1 spot.
Exactly.
Wanting to have that perfection, which, by the way, was his former summoner name.
That's true. Fantic, mid laner for the Direwolves, used to be named Perfection, but he has good mechanics. He's good with the mind games as well from what we've seen, but he's a hungry player. He's actually Korean boot camped himself for a few months to try and get better and prepare because this guy is hungry. He's always kind of been, like I said, the bridesmaid, never the bride, but he wants to be that number 1 mid in OCE. He wants to be able to do his region proud by representing the Oceanic Premier League.
And when you look into the top lane for the Direwolves as well, you're not seeing a player that wants to play a lot of tanks. You're not seeing that typical initiator style as much. Very carry heavy. very much capable of putting the team on his back as well. Even though he's not quite a veteran, he's still somebody who's able to carry his own weight and do work for this team.
Yeah, he'll play things like Olaf top. He's played some Fizz, Camille, and so Chippy is a bit quiet. And the criticism I have heard of him is he doesn't talk too much during the games. You want those vocal members. You want those people who are going to communicate, especially on carries, very key members of the team.
You've got to make sure that you're in contact with everybody else. It's so easy to fall behind on a carry, right? That's always the conversation that happens around the tank versus the carry. The tank ends up falling a little bit behind. His economy gets throttled a little bit. He's still going to be useful. He can still get into the fight. He can still CC people. He can control things. The carry falls behind. All of a sudden, you're losing a ton of your impact in those fights.
Yeah.
And the pick doesn't really shine the way you needed it to.
Have to talk about what you need, when you need it, and how quickly you need it as well as a carry. If you need a gank and it's got this short window, then definitely help yourself out. And you can see there, practice tool up and running. These guys getting all warmed up on stage.
Getting ready to go, making sure that they've got all those mechanics on point. And we've been talking a little bit about carries, about tanks, about play styles. And, you know, with talkers in the mid lane on the Red Canids, the way that these guys like to play, they like to focus on their bot lane. They like to give BRTT the tools to succeed. Let him be that carry.
And that's why we're looking at the bottom lane of BRTT and King as that big matchup here for this, because BRTT, when he has talkers in the mid lane, they like to draft aggressively. They like to have him have a pushing lane that then he can then go to the mid lane and play off the control mages that talkers has drafted for himself. So it may be an explosive bottom side of the map here.
And the nice thing for BRTT as well, you know, he's aggressive in the lane. He wants to leave lane with the advantage, get himself going early, and he's got a support player in Dude who really has a large champion pool. He can play a lot of different things. If BRTT is in a spot where he needs a certain support to be able to succeed in the lane, chances are Dude is going to have some kind of an answer there. He's going to have a way to make it work.
And I love the story behind Dude as well. He seems incredibly hardworking. You're talking about his champion pool where he's refined it over and over again. I harken back to the days of when Freak and I would cast the EU Challenger Series, and we had to cast some Gamers 2 games before they became G2 and in the LCS. And Dude was on that team as a support, had one of the highest KDAs in that league. Went over to Brazil about a year and a half ago, joined a team, won a championship, became a CBLOL champion, and then he actually got kicked from the team because they wanted a Portuguese speaker. Dude is French. He's the only French person on that team. Everybody else is Brazilian, and they wanted somebody who, integrated a little bit better with the team. So Dude actually goes back to France, studies incredibly hard, and comes back months later, joins the Red Canids. Now people are saying he's better at Portuguese than some native speakers. The guy puts in hella work, and he's definitely somebody that you have to watch out for.
And it's earned him a spot now playing in the play-ins for MSI along with the rest of the Red Canids who, like you mentioned earlier, this was a team that didn't see a lot of success for a while, and then with some big roster swaps, bringing in Robo, bringing in BRTT, Nap on Talkers, they managed to find a lot more wins, a lot more victories, a lot more successes. And then an even more recent change, they brought Broken Shard on as coach, and that was very recent.
Yeah, previously they had Jeeves as their coach throughout pretty much the entire split, and then they brought on Broken Shard here, who does have some experience. He actually coached Talker's team INTZ at the Worlds 2016, so he has some rapport with the players, but also a lot of experience as coach, especially on the international stage and with some wildcard teams. The playing teams, though, it's a little bit cutthroat, especially in this group, because the desk was talking about it where CBLOL kind of expected to be #1 in this group, but you also have Supermassive, who has tons of representation from the previous MSI. And then you also have Japan. The LJL cannot be slept on right now because that team actually has a lot of hype coming in. Japan, of course, never actually done well internationally in an MSI or a Worlds qualification, but this might be their year. Whereas OCE, you look at them, they're trying just as hard as they were before. They're trying to get up there, and this is where they can make that statement.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to immediately point out, is that when you're talking about this group, you're saying, yeah, we've got the big teams that have previously been in the wildcard tournaments that have done really well for themselves in Turkey and in Brazil. Then you've got this brand new up-and-coming Enigma in Japan, and people are kind of like leaving the Oceania boys off to the corner here a little bit. They're saying, compared to these other three teams, a lot of people are picking them to be the least threatening. So the Dire Wolves, if they can manage to take down the Canids in game #1 and say, okay, look, here's one of your favorite teams, they're on their home turf, and we beat them.
Yeah.
Then there might be a little bit of backing to those confident words coming out of the Dire Wolves.
That's that statement. That's that statement that you want in game 1 of the international tournament that you get to play in. You get to say, you know what, let's make this a library. Let's make that Brazilian crowd that's so passionate have something to ponder.
Yeah, let's make sure that we can back up what we were saying and don't just end up becoming this meme of, yeah, we're going to beat everybody except Korea. You got a long way to go before you get to play against SKT, before you get to play against those top-level teams. You've got to get through this. You've got to win the best of 5 next week to just qualify, and then you've got to play through the rest.
Yep, and there has been an issue on stage. It's been resolved at the moment. We'll be in a few minutes here, whereas Red already in the lobby and Direwolves are filtering in, as I can see on my screen. We're just testing the stamina of that kid in the front row who just keeps freaking out.
These fans are excited, man. I love just watching it. They're so pumped up. They're so just amped.
He's loving it.
Be there and be part of this, and that's kind of what we were talking about for the Red Canids. You know, most of those fans are cheering for the home team.
Oh, yeah.
So that has just got to be inspiring
feel like if
to make sure that you get that win.
If you aren't cheering for the home team, then it's treason.
Yeah, you're getting kicked out of the stadium.
But the Brazilian fans are incredibly passionate, but also it's interesting because I talked about Dude before, where he's French. He's holding things like a Brazilian flag in the interview that was done with him in the MSI trailer. He's fully assimilated to the culture. He's completely accepted, and he's kind of like an honorary Brazilian.
Which is fantastic for him and for team unity and team synergy. You can't have a successful team environment where somebody feels completely isolated, where somebody feels completely left out of it, or kind of like the outside man. You want everyone to feel like they belong to that same coherent unit and that they all have a role to play in a team that wants, values, and needs them there. And that seems to be like where these guys are at.
Yeah, and that's what you want, like you said. Of course, the Red Canids, some people say that maybe they shouldn't have been the representative because INTZ was the #1 team at the end of the split, but they definitely won their crown, and the crowd is behind them as well. Despite being a newer team, they definitely have some established members, like we had said previously.
Right, and even if the roster itself playing together as a 5-man unit is newer, that overall experience can go a long way in making sure they're prepared for these bigger stages. Because you know, sometimes if you're only used to playing on your local stage and then you get to these bigger international events, it can cause that next level of pressure that results in way worse performances than would otherwise be expected.
Yeah, I mean, NA, we already had Worlds here. Didn't help us.
Nope. We goofed.
Uh-oh. Hometown advantage? I don't know if that's a thing. But
well,
I would say for people who cannot handle it mentally, it is a huge advantage for you because it puts you in a really good spot. You know the crowd is behind you. There's been a few times where, personal anecdote, I played on stage, even here at Riot in some internal tournament, and I had Freak on my team. So we definitely weren't the favorites. Everybody's like booing every time you get the kill. But when you hear the crowd go crazy for you dying, that could be mentally taxing. That could force you to tilt. And I couldn't handle it. I was like, I want these guys to either shut up or cheer for me. Yeah, it's one of those things that can get to a player, but they have to be mentally resilient, unlike myself, and just make sure that they're in a good spot.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Zyrene, I'm not a good enough player to have qualified for anything to play on a stage before, so I can't even relate to your experience, but I can bet that that is a true tilter.
And that's why we're casters.
And that's why we're casters. That's why those guys are in the chairs behind the monitors, and we're standing up casting the game from here. That's the fun part.
Because but we always win.
Yeah, we always win. No matter who wins, we get to see a victory screen.
Yep. So, almost into the game here. Finally set up on stage. Of course, the first match, everybody always has to check their key bindings, make sure everything is going completely well. Get those checklists going.
Key bindings, mouse settings,
I think we're
every other keyboard setting. It's all got to be there, all got to be right where it needs to be. So hopefully this first match can be a real testament of what we've got in store for the rest of the play-ins and for all of MSI 2017.
Yep, and could be the first pick ban coming up here for the international tournament. I see the pick ban screen,
but is it a fluke?
And you can see it on that screen in the back.
I think we've got some kind of an issue.
Yeah. A missed ban as the crowd goes silent.
All right.
And somebody's dodged.
All right, someone is Q dodged. So we're going to have to wait and see if we can fix that out.
Yeah, expected at the beginning, to be completely honest, where not everybody has everything set up. There's some issues, but we'll see what happens here between them.
And it only gets smoother as you go. It's always, the first game is the roughest game.
And it looks like an on-stage computer froze. So the whole lobby has to be remade. And you know, we're ready, we're raring to go, but you know that the players are as well. And this even just delays like this where you were mentally backstage in your huddle saying, we're going to crush these guys, we're going to kill these kids, let's go,
let's go.
And then you sit down and this happens. It forces you to take a breath, forces you to calm down a bit. You lose the adrenaline and you lose a little bit of that. It will spike again as the game starts, but your focus, you have to be able to keep that. I know so many players that when they're ready to go, they are ready to go, but you have to be able to keep that focus. You have to kind of kick it into neutral and still have that engine going.
And those sort of peaks and valleys of energy can be really, really exhausting. Honestly, if you have to go up and then you go down and then you go up and then you go down, it's not exactly an enjoyable experience. Audience watching at home, the audience watching here in Brazil, us on the caster desk, everybody is ready for this game to start, but no one more than the players themselves. Hopefully we will be in just momentarily. Still getting this lobby set back up so we can get the players back in.
Yep. And so let's
Canids joining right now.
Talk one last time about the teams before they jump in, where we're watching the bottom lane here. We're also watching the mid lane a little bit, where it's Talkers going up against the formerly named Perfection Infantic. And that's an interesting matchup because Talkers has Worlds experience. He has experience on the international stage, touted as one of the best mid laners in the region for Brazil. But also he's improved a lot this split. Apparently he's much more vocal now than he was before, becoming a bit of a shot caller for the team and having a lot of control mage ability, but he's not the main playmaker of the team. We saw some things like Aurelion Sol where he would want to roam, but now it's a little bit more controlled. It's about those Cassiopeias, it's about getting the Orianas and making sure that he's able to control the mid lane, and then have BRTT go off with Dude making plays on things like Blitzcrank, even Thresh for the support.
And going up against somebody like Talkers, that's a way for Fantix to find that opportunity that we were looking for him to get himself into the spotlight, not be the guy off to the side of the stage anymore, being like, man, I wish I was up there. I wish I was the guy at the front, at the foremost of everything. This is his chance. If you can take down somebody like Talkers, that puts your name on it.
Oh yeah, same thing with King. If he can take down BRTT, his name, King, might become a little bit more relevant as time goes on.
Absolutely. You beat the guy who beat Doublelift, that means you beat Doublelift.
Transitive property of kicking ass. That's what I gotta say.
That's how you do it.
Beat that guy, obviously I'm better than both of them. Still, we'll see what happens there. BRTT, look at that, ready to go.
He's confident, he's ready. Him and the rest of the team. Showing off the tattoo a little bit.
This is a good side. Which tattoo? He's got so many.
That was the Twitch tattoo. We got the Draven axes on the arms. We got the Twitch on the neck.
The Kale wings and the Callista spear on his shoulder.
Now, see, the thing is, all of those are 80 carries except for one. If he ends up breaking out an 80 carry Kale at some point, I won't even know how to cast it because I don't know what that does.
I don't know either.
I mean, you can peel for yourself. You can ult yourself. Make it so you don't die.
That's true if you're the hyper carry and you have no other hyper carries, but they're probably going for something a little bit more stable in the bottom lane, a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I would expect.
Caitlyn, even Ezreal. I don't know about the potential for a Kog'Maw here. Usually when they run their sub mid laner Yoda, they will run a Kog'Maw or something where it's more top mid focused and their bot lane gets to play a scaler. So we'll see what ends up happening here for the Red Canids. I do see that we are in champion select here. And not trying to tease everybody.
Yeah, not getting any hopes up falsely or anything like that, but might be getting into game one soon.
And you can see, there we go. Varus, Rumble, the first two bans from the Canids over towards the Direwolves. We'll band away the Graves and Fizz.
Focus on the jungle, on the top lane, a little bit on the 80 carry roll. Be keeping the Varus away from King, and the Graves away from Napon. Ashe gonna be the second 80 carry, banned away by the Red Canids. That, along with Varus, kept away from King, keeping him off those longer range champs.
Yeah, our champion select is a little bit ahead. We could actually predict it's gonna be an Ashe. Boom. Nailed it.
Nailed it completely.
Oh, on the other side for the Direwolves, though, they still have one final ban here. And it looks like we can see that it is the Shen already. The Shen actually nerfed on 7.8 quite a bit here, which is interesting because that champion, it still has the global pressure, it still has the ability to protect the 80 carry composition, but there are still things like Ivern and like Lulu that exist. And the top lane Shen is kind of one of those things that's like a catch-all.
And you just said it, Ivern still exists, and the Red Canid's gonna recognize that and capitalize on it real quick here, locking that in before anything else, but that does leave the Lulu open, so Direwolves are gonna grab that one first for the themselves.
And the Direwolves, we've talked about how they have an aggressive bottom lane that's mechanically proficient with King and Destiny. And so now they have Lulu and Caitlyn locked in as their first 2 picks to try and take away the Caitlyn Ivern synergy. But they also took away the Lulu, which kind of has some parallels here with things like Karma, where you can take the Karma in the mid lane, or Karma in the support position, and make sure that you have something that can shield an AD carry. So expecting something like the Karma to come through here for the Red Canids, lest it be banned away later on.
Syndra hovered and now locked in for Talkers. Talking about him playing those control mages, having that long range ability, the ability to protect zones, protect his own teammates. You can definitely do that on a Syndra. You threaten completely destroying anybody that comes even remotely close to you. And talking about the Ivern as well for Napon. Napon is a player who doesn't exactly shine through making these huge mechanical outplays or just 1v1ing his opponent all the time. He's a player who has very surprising pathing. He contributes to the team well. Playing a champion like Ivern is exactly up his alley.
Yeah, Ivern is a champion that is incredibly annoying to deal with. Doesn't really have a parallel, but it's all about routing. It's all about making sure that you understand where your enemy is going to be, heading them off, and playing around your team. And we see the Thresh locked in for Dude. Signature pick for this guy who lands death sentence after death sentence, played it in the finals multiple times, and really went off to the point where he's a big playmaker for the team. He could step up here. They could definitely have a good match here against the Direwolves.
And I love seeing that confidence. In the first game of the MSI play-ins, you lock in the comfort pick. Even if it might not be the #1 pick in the meta, you're saying this is how we win, and this is how we're going to find the win right here. While Fantix and the Direwolves respond with the Vladimir pickup for the mid lane.
Yeah, Vladimir is interesting because when we think about counters to Syndra, Fizz, Echo jump to mind, but also though Vladimir is considered a bit of a counter to the Syndra, there is a way for Syndra to win the lane because she'll win it early. You have to win it really hard, potentially take Ignite. But it is a matchup where the Vladimir can definitely thrive in it as well and then be somebody that doesn't get blown up by the Syndra.
Into the second part of the ban phase here, and the Direwolves have focused all their attention onto BRTT. Kog'Maw and Twitch banned away, while in response, the Red Canids going to put all their focus onto Schernfire, taking Lee and Elise out of the pool.
Get some playmakers out of there. They already have the Graves banned away. Rengar was nerfed in terms of damage, so you might see something a little bit more, like that, like the Gragas coming through here for the 2 teams. For Direwolves, because the Lee Sin, definitely a great pick for Schernfire. It's something that I remember him playing even over here in the North American Challenger Series and having a good time on. And the Elise was also another champion. Nidalee was up there too, but you want him on those playmakers. So Gragas, a potential flex pick for jungle and top lane. But we'll see what BRTT goes with here. The Jinx being hovered would be a hyper carry that hasn't been played much, but it is something that can benefit immensely from having an escape from the Thresh and the protection of the Ivern.
And we're going to see that locked in, recognizing that synergy right here, right now, picking that one up for his team. Going to be a massive backline threat if this game is allowed to go on long enough for him to farm up and get those items he needs for that champion to reach hyper carry status. One more pick to go on the side of the Red Canids. Still need a top laner in this lineup.
See what happens. There have been a lot of champions that have had small changes. For example, Jinx had a small change where her Flame Chompers at max rank is actually 6 seconds off of the cooldown, so her late game is even better in terms of self-peel. And the Jarvan being locked in here, we've seen some top lane Jarvan. It's become popular lately with a W max first, the Golden Aegis, where if the person has 2,500 HP, that's actually the break point where you actually get more shielding from them than you did previously per target. So you have 2,500 HP, which you're typically building some tankiness, you'll actually get more, because now it's percent of Jarvan's maximum health per champion hit, as opposed to a base.
With that Jarvan locked in, that's kind of exactly the type of pick we were expecting from Robo, to be quite honest. An aggressive player, a player who plays a lot of different champions. So if you're going to put those 2 traits together, Jarvan pretty much fits the bill, exactly what you need. And the final pick on the side of the Direwolves is going to be that top lane Olaf for Chippies.
We prefaced it a little bit. The Olaf for the top laner here. Chippies, kind of a quiet guy, like we had said. Definitely boosted his confidence, but he plays things like the Fizz. He'll play the Rumble, the Camille, but the Olaf seems to be something he's gone towards here. A champion that hasn't been touched in a very long time with buffs or nerfs.
Now, curiously, do you think he sticks with the Flash on this Olaf? Normally we do see the Ghost on the Olaf.
I think so.
But the Flash will get you out of the Jarvan.
Exactly, because having played a lot of Jarvan back in the day, you loved seeing Olafs that ran Ghost in the jungle, because you know that he's just going to be a sitting duck after you use the ultimate. So I think that's a good choice there. It's not like the one that you would typically go for, but I definitely think you stick with the Flash.
Well, he is going to be sticking with that one as we load in here to Summoner's Rift for the first time for MSI 2017. Should be an interesting show between these two teams. The compositions alone have got me excited for this one. You've got comfort picks, you've got surprise picks, you've got different picks
New
that
stuff.
you don't really get to see throughout the regular split. This is fun, man.
I love it. This is one of the reasons to tune in and watch these types of things, because where are you going to see a Jinx? We haven't really seen one in North America. The Thresh coming out, then the Jarvan top has become a little bit more popular. Then the Olaf top, nowhere in sight for us here in NA. So absolutely love these guys kind of bringing out all the stops. And this is, like we said, best of one. So you're definitely drafting something that is top tier for you.
You're not exactly picking this thing to think, okay, we're going to take it easy in game number 1, and then we'll win in games number 2 and 3 if it goes bad. You're not having one of those just adapt and see what they do games. You've got to just come out the gate swinging and get in there and get that win right here, right now. You can see the fans going crazy in the crowd. Excited for this game number 1 to get underway between the Canids and the Direwolves. As we load into Summoner's Rift for the first time. Already on to it, 50 seconds in. You can see the red Canids slightly past the river point, laying down a couple of wards, keeping an eye on that Razorbeak camp.
And we'll talk about the compositions here for a second, because red, they have a little bit of protection with the fact that they have Ivern. They also have the Thresh to give a move block, a way for the Jinx to move away from things, a kind of an escape tool. But then they have Talkers, who's in a position where he did take the Ignite, not the Ghost, so he can try and beat the mid laner of Fantix on that Vladimir, try to win that 1v1, but then roam around, possibly get some kills. It will be a little difficult, though, because they have a Vladimir who has a lot of HP, and then they also have a Lulu who can help save people. So red, they're looking for a little bit in terms of hyper carry, but also some pick potential here as well.
You know what, Tyrene? I really love those nerfs we did to Exhaust, because it just makes everybody take Ignite now, and you get so much more action, so much more kill potential when both supports are running Ignite, when both mid laners are running Ignite. Expect to see them trying to make some plays just all over the place this game.
Yeah, and right there we just saw it got checked, so Schernfire is on that Raptor camp. They saw him with the ward. We'll see what happens for Napon here, because he might go to his Raptors, and there's potential for him to go to the enemy blue buff, but I don't think he'll risk it here in this first game. Used his smite on the Raptors, not on a blue buff camp or anything like that at the start. You see Talkers and Fantix just going back and forth, already just trading very heavily.
Blow after blow with the auto attacks, both going to be taken down to about 200 HP, but of course, those constant trades favor Vladimir. He likes to be able to heal back up, use those transfusions, get his health back up.
Yeah, but you want to, that's the thing, is the constant trades, but it has to be constant at a certain rate where he doesn't have that few seconds to start sustaining himself up. It has to be really actually constant. Whereas the Syndra, now you're kind of damaging her mana pool as a Vladimir. You're trying to out-sustain her. If she runs out of mana, she's absolutely no threat to you, so you just kind of keep trading HP for Syndra mana for the early parts of the game over and over again. He bought multiple potions and boots so he can try and get through that war of attrition at the beginning of the game for lane dominance.
No counter jungling coming out from the Ivern just yet. You already mentioned it earlier, likely not going to see that in game number 1. Robo pushed onto his back foot here in the top lane, but you can kind of expect that as another melee champion up against an Olaf early on. The constant ability to hit the undertows over and over and over again is very scary if you get into a 1v1. Usually you have to sort of yield that lane to him early. Robo's going to take a couple of trades back and forth there with him. Get a decent amount of damage, but at the same time, there's a lot of minions there, so
yeah,
probably best to just stay defensive. Keystone Mastery's popping up there on the bottom part of your screen. You can see the grasp for the Jarvan, while the Fervor on the Olaf means he's going to be doing a lot more damage if these fights go on.
Yeah, and if he has that sustained fight where he can just auto-attack you, the lower he gets, the faster he swings, just ends up stacking up very quickly. And the fact that Fervor actually just gives flat attack damage now instead of previously it used to just be, hey, you got some bonus on hit damage. This actually benefits his Reckless Swing and will convert damage into true damage for him. So he gets even more true damage the lower he gets.
Plus it also buffs the undertows. Pretty much everything.
Exactly. Very, very auto-attack based, but also spellcastery in a sense, where he's already actually forced Robo back from throwing a whole bunch of axes at him, making sure that he's pushed out of the lane.
Robo will get back, managed to grab a cloth armor and a long sword as he makes his way back up here utilizing the TP. To see what Chippies decides to buy for his first back, just grabbing himself a ruby crystal for the time being. Don't know if he's going to be able to pick up anything else. Does grab the long sword as he now TPs himself back into lane.
Oh,
continues to be in a good spot. Fantix taken very low. Sanguine Pool to make sure he escapes a death that would otherwise come his way.
Yep, and now Fantix will not back off here because there's no mana on Talkers. Like I said, you're just attacking the mana pool over and over again. He got a summoner spell. Fantix is actually still up a little bit in terms of CS here. He's got almost 10 up, and he's up in levels. So this is actually working out quite well for him as he'll continue to sustain back up. But
Destiny's in some trouble. First blood over to Dude. BRTT seeing if he might be able to chase anything else down. Not going to find it so far, but man, they got him overextended there.
That looks like it was a hook underneath the turret to possibly get him. Dude blows the ignite as well. And I absolutely loved the little MSI feature that we did, the eyes on MSI, where Dude constantly getting praised for his death sentences and how much they're landing here. And you can see that was a minion there previously. BRTT hit it to last hit it, and then he actually flays him into the chompers and into the turret range. No chance to flash there for Destiny, who still has that up.
Very well done coming out from the duo from the Red Canids, showcasing what they can do with those mechanical talents in a 2v2. Schernfire and Nippon going to find each other here on the top side. Robo makes his way over, utilizing that Ivern Q, get himself in range, but Schernfire gets himself out, utilizing the Blast Cone, but isn't exactly better for the whole situation. Takes a little bit more damage than he would have liked to.
Yeah, and now he kind of has to back here unless he's going to go for a repeat gank on the top side, because there's no jungle camps for him to clear on the northern side of the jungle. So he'll route towards the bottom and then just try to lick his wounds and recover from that little move. Right now, though, Dude going for a roam play, potentially on mid. You can see that Napon is coming from the other side, so Dude's going to try to push him to the left, whereas Napon's going to come in. There's the stun. There's the root.
Done. Here comes the root. Death Sentence not going to be finding the mark. Pool is used. Hemo Play going to be coming down. Still need a little bit more damage, and Talkers has got it. 2-0 for the Red Cannon.
That's what I was talking about. This Thresh for Dude is so potent, so good. He's able to roam and really change the pace of the game. The Thresh death sentences that he goes for in lane, there was a line in the Eyes on MSI where it's like, do not go for the death sentence unless it's going to be a kill. Don't do it for harass, because if you miss, it doesn't matter. Go for the kill. And that's what he's been doing here. He's been going for the kill in that bottom side, got one, and then was able to roam. And here comes Schernfire.
Dude tossing down the lantern to keep BRTT safe. BRTT also has to flash away. The trigger seed from Ivern doing enough to keep him alive ever so barely. BRTT gets out.
And that's why they love this Thresh again for Dude, because of the fact that he can save BRTT on things like the Kog'Maw, the Twitch even, the Jinx, where he doesn't have his own escape. And a lot of the power budget of those champions is spent in not having an escape. And when you can get it from another champion, it ends up being pretty brutal if it gets ahead.
And that's exactly what you mentioned in Champion Select when you talked about BRTT hovering this Jinx, picking up this hyper carry. When you've got enablers like that, it's an awesome pick. The synergy between the champions allows it to scale, allows it to get to the point where it doesn't matter if it's meta. It doesn't matter if it might struggle against things that would normally shut it down early, because you can get past that utilizing your team structure.
Yeah, and then you get to the point where you can start resetting off of kills. Also looks like he's going for a Blade of the Ruined King build here, possibly a Blade of the Ruined King into a Hurricane. Incredibly popular build right now for AD carries. It's funny because everybody's like, ah, man, Blade of the Ruined King's so great because it diversified AD carry builds. Now everybody does it. Now everybody's got People were just sick of the lethality builds, and now they're like, yeah, I love it. Well, it also diversified the number of AD carries that you could play. You just kind of build a lot of them the same now.
That's true. There are more, even though they all build Borg, at least there's 5 or 6 of them instead of Jhin and Varus.
We will take that.
Yeah, I will take that over the Jhin and Varus meta every day.
Yeah, no problem. And look at this. Because of the early kill, Talkers now has a big advantage in that mid lane. He was down 10 CS. Now he's up a bit here. Granted, there is a wave to be taken, but at the same time, he does have his Ignite back, and he has complete coverage. And on the 8th minute, let there be sound.
We've got sound!
Let there be sound.
We've got game sound, boys. My senses are no longer deprived.
I don't know if anybody else was in that situation or if that was going out to live, but...
Yeah, we're not sure, but we haven't had sound for the past 8 minutes, but now that we do, oh man, it's a whole new experience here for MSI 2017, as the Red Canids currently lead their opponents by about 1,000 gold, having a very solid early game so far. Double buffs on Talker's Syndra means he's scarier than ever, just pushing these waves up, maintaining control over the mid lane.
I was talking to Inori on the desk for the finals. He's talking about how Ivern is just so good because you will always have buffs on your laners. The sustain from the red buff for your mana, the sustain for your HP from the red buff, depends on who you give it to, but he's like, it's pretty broken because you aren't actually sacrificing your early buffs to go ahead and give somebody like a top laner a lane advantage.
Yeah, they're just a bonus. Pass it off, spread the wealth, enjoy the fun. It's fun for everybody except the enemy who has to play against it, because as you can see right now, Fantic's just zoned away, even underneath his own turret. Can't find any sense of safety.
And I really, really like this because Talkers, he's constantly pushing this Vladimir matchup and making sure that the Syndra can bully. And I talked about how Vladimir will eventually kind of rubber band back into the game with his late game. You have to keep the pressure on. You have to keep him under his turret and the fact that the Syndra gets a blue buff early on is huge. He would have gotten it regardless if it was Ivern or not, but now he has somebody who helps him siege, gets under the turret. That turret, very close to going down. It's actually going to go down before Schernfire could actually make contact, so they lose it.
Big stuff from the Red Canids, grabbing the turret first blood for themselves, taking that gold lead up to about 2K. Sitting very pretty as Schernfire moves towards the top end of the map, taking down the Scuttle Crab to secure a little bit more control in this area. Might be looking towards top again, but the last time this happened, it didn't go too well for him. Chippy's pretty much has this under control. With Robo underneath the turret the entire time, there's not a lot of plays Schern can make.
Yeah, Chippy, because he's aggressive, doesn't mean you get to gank that lane, though. Means you'd have to go for a tower dive. We saw Schernfire come around where he was at the blast cone previously, right below where the screen is now, and he got caught by Napon there. So he was trying to go for a potential dive onto Robo because they're saying this is a lane that we can punish, but it has that inherent risk of you're going for a dive. It is definitely risky, and against a Jarvan who can lock you up and then run away, we'll see here.
Chippy's trying to start this off and make it happen. Damage comes in, and the shield's going to keep him alive. Over aggro from Chippy's.
Looks like Robo got some heal there and was able to actually have extra shield on top of it. No chance there for Chippies, who went aggro when Schernfire wasn't there, but Napon definitely smelled that one coming.
That was an audacious move from Chippy's, just trying to punish that, noticing that the flag and drag was down after Robo tried to get Chippy stuck under the turret. Chippy's thought that was a green light, but that was not what he was hoping would happen from that one. You can hear the crowd just going wild for the Canids.
And that's the thing too, is if you screw up that dive and you hear the crowd chant that heavily, you got to start thinking, oh man, what was I doing? What was I doing? And you can't let that get to you. You have to recover. Look at that, though.
Talker's in a really bad spot. Going to be polymorphed and beaten down as he tries to come around behind the Dire Wolves, and they get themselves on the board.
Yep, inherent risk of going for a dive. And this is a team that you didn't shove fast enough to have that wave under the turret. That didn't hit at the right time. That's some missed timing there between the roam of Talkers and also when BRTT and Dude were having the wave push up. Because if a Thresh is much closer, there's a way for him to save. There's potential for him to see the Gragas coming, but they weren't that far up. They actually played it still a little bit too safe.
And Dude's Thresh right now, he's got the Sightstone, he's got the Boots of Mobility, he's got multiple control wards. The early successes that he found with the kills and the assists and the roams have given him the early support economy he needs to be really, really effective.
Yeah, if he can get out of lane and leave the Jinx to be self-sufficient, then there's a possibility. But remember the last time he left, there was an Ignite on BRTT who almost went down and had to blow his summoners to get away. So might be a little scarred of, hey, you know, the Jinx is the hyper carry here. Let's keep her in lane, scale a little bit, and not get completely shoved in.
One thing I do want to point out, you did see it cast as Talkers was in some trouble, but Napon already has Redemption completed on this Ivern. Big team fight item for these guys.
So he hit the plant. They know he's there, but Chippies didn't get to see the Ivern, so this might be an engage.
Robo going for it, seeing if he can lock this guy down, gets the knock up, a little bit more damage. Decides to go for that Demacian. Oh, she's in the ring! Cataclysm comes in, Daisy's into the ring, and they are going to beat him down. Napon grabbing the kill.
He actually just tagged Daisy in. She leaps right into the ring. And she's ready for the smackdown there.
WWE style. This is great.
Oh, that was beautiful. But that's the Red Canids getting off to a 4-1 lead, and they're going to get this top turret as well. I got to say, Napon talked about his jungle pathing and how he's so smart. He saw the Scryer's Bloom hit. It didn't see him, and then that's where Robo went in, started being aggressive on Chippies, who had been constantly winning that matchup. But hold on, Talkers going to go.
Oh,
get dove.
Talker's in some serious trouble here, trying to make the flash into the outplays, but can't quite do it. The ult and Ignite will not be enough to burn away Fantix, who grabs himself his first kill of the game. That's 2 for the Dire Wolves, but they lose that top lane turret that you mentioned, and they're still down almost 3,000 gold, despite grabbing the kill on that enemy mid laner, although that will give Fantix some breathing room.
Yes, absolutely. Gives him some breathing room, and whenever you give the Vladimir some breathing room in this matchup, it definitely alleviates a whole bunch of it. It's those volatile matchups where it'll go either way. The Syndra has to stay on top, has to stay in a position where she does enough damage for how much mana she's spending, and doing that constantly to get the Vladimir low. Now she doesn't have summoner spells, which is a benefit for the Vladimir, even though he doesn't have his. I definitely think not having the Ignite up or the Flash is beneficial for the Vladimir in this matchup, because there's no real kill potential unless there's a gank.
We're starting to see more items come online, Zyrene. Blade of the Ruined King finished for King. BRTT has enough money in his inventory to complete his whenever he decides to go back and shop, which is looking to be right about now. Proto Belt and Morello Namicon for Vlad and Syndra, respectively. Top laners still sort of working on theirs, falling a little bit behind the curve, but that's because they're also branching out into a couple different pieces, going for the Tiamat for the Jarvan, the Tabbies for the Olaf. Fantix, although he's lost his turret, although he's been kind of on his back foot, you can see his farm's not really suffering for it. 125 compared to the 123 of the Syndra, doing a good job making sure he stays relevant. And as you mentioned with the rubber band, as the game goes on, we get into those mid-game team fights, those late-game team fights, he's going to be very scary.
Yeah, very, very scary. And the fact that he has a Lulu to speed him up to get him in, it's kind of like when you'd see Karma compositions with the Vladimir, but the Vladimir has some form of aid that helps him get into the backline, get his Storm Raider Surge off, and then allows him to kind of go from there with the ease and the constant damage that he'll be throwing out. Bottom lane, though, this is tricky because looks like Red setting up for a Cloudbreaker potential bottom dive, but you can see there's just wards littered everywhere around this area.
Vision all over the place will be cleared out by the Red Canids, who maintain control over the area, pop that blast cone. You always see teams like to do that these days. Now that everybody's used to having plants in the game and playing around them, popping the blast cones, stealing the Scryer's blooms whenever you can, very important to properly maintaining control over an area.
Yeah, if you're a support, your first roam, once you shove in, about maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you go up, walk forward into his jungle, ward over his blue, and then kill his blast cone, because that's one of those unique routes that gets you in. It means you have to spend more wards, or put a ward in a place that gives you less reaction time. You put one in that bush, then might be too late by the time he's actually in that bush.
Red Canids, mid lane and jungle, still hanging around this Drake pit, but not doing a whole lot with it just yet. BRTT pushed up. You can see the red side control ward for the Dire Wolves back into the tri-brush behind these guys. Teleport is up for Chippies.
It is an Olaf teleport, though, and it would be pretty difficult without a Ghost to actually track them down or run them down. Going for the Trinity Force? Question mark?
Really?
Okay. I was slightly baited because
I thought it was a
Black Cleaver.
Black Cleaver, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you see the...
Oh.
Either way, King going to be brought very low. Wild Growth can alive, and a super mega death rocket sends him straight down. 5-2 for the Red Canids.
He had Flash. He had Heal. He used neither of them there to actually
thought it wouldn't be enough.
I don't know if he saw the rocket flying at his face. That's one of those things that takes you an extra second to react to, and the fact that he was also playing against the Jinx.
Ah, boom.
Who does that?
Who does that, man? Who plays against Jinx in 2017?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately for the Dire Wolves, they are, and that Jinx gun is just making mincemeat out of this tier 2 turret. They'll shoot that one down, go up to 4-0 in turret count. And the Red Canids are definitely doing their hometown proud.
Absolutely. And now, gonna swap it up. We'll see the backs come through. Assume they'll go towards the top side, get BRTT some more farm. Let's watch that one more time here, because this is another hook. No minions in the way. Puts it right on the Flame Chompers. Talkers comes in, leashes the ultimate, and boom! Could have flashed, could have healed, but BRTT is feeling himself today.
The synergy between these two champions has been great too. Both times we've seen the death sentences make plays, immediately BRTT is throwing those chompers exactly down in the right spot so that as the death sentence expires, the chompers activate in that split second, trap him up.
That's some art right there, man.
It is. It
That's
really
one of those
is.
things where he's putting it in a position where even though the hook is going to yank him a bit, it yanks him right onto him. He's not putting him too far back. A lot of people will put it on like the initial hook location, but the guy's not going to be there anymore. He's going to get pulled slightly.
You just get brought a little bit further forward, and that's always where BRTT is putting them down. Now Robo in the bottom lane having to try to 1v2 defend against these guys, but King with that Blade of the Ruined King puts a lot of poke down.
Yeah, but they're sieging the top side. Talkers once again shoved mid, rotated a little faster here. And that's just an ultimate from Schernfire to actually try and clear the wave.
It's very hard to stop these guys. Rush being laid down by Napon as well makes Siege makes Siege situations into a nightmare, especially when you combine those with the threat of the Jinx traps, with the threat of the death sentences coming out from them. Those brushes are deadly.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, you put traps in those, you don't know who's in that. That's one of those things that it's harder to appreciate in the game, or sorry, in spectator than it is in the game.
Right, because we have the vision. We can see everything no matter what. But in game, when you're staring at one of those brushes, you don't know who's hanging out inside of it, who's gotten back further. Very difficult.
And you see Dude playing for Lantern. That's the thing, as soon as BRTT's walking a little too far forward, plays for the Lantern there and Dude gets out. So he's playing that dance with Thresh. Walk forward for the death sentences, be in sync with your team. So look at that, the death sentence.
This time on the Fantix. BRTT over the wall, not able to get in there for the damage just yet. Daisy going to be on the front line. Redemption coming down. Talker's going to be grabbing some heal from it.
Yeah, and that's a reset. Now you can see Robo goes towards mid, shoves that out. He's trying to pull Vladimir down here. Because and now they're going to actually use the Lantern for rotation to get BRTT here faster. This is a macro play to try and get damage on these turrets and skirt between the two.
They're doing a great job of it so far. Direwolves struggling to keep up with these rotations, but now BRTT in some trouble. Gonna be juggling around, gonna be knocked back and taken down. Fantix grabbing the kill on that one. Napon now going to be chased, but immediately saved by the Dark Passage. A good catch from Direwolf.
That's what you got to watch out for, though. I was talking about as soon as BRTT is too far forward, Dude is throwing in the Lantern, but the Lantern was used for the rotation. Then it was a few seconds, I believe, from being off of cooldown, but even then, the body slam flash from Schernfire and then the cast back, you always have to be conscious of it. Chippy, though, going hard.
Going in, looking for Talkers. They're going to be able to find him easily. Talkers just too far forward, couldn't click the Lantern to get himself away to safety, and Schernfire grabs the kill for the Gragas. 4-5 now. Direwolves only down by 1 kill. They grab a couple of turrets for themselves as well. What once was an almost 5,000 gold deficit is down to 1.5.
Yeah, and that's scary. Watch this here. The Lantern just a little bit off cooldown, and then it gets BRTT knocked in. Great body slam flash. They get the flash and heal from BRTT, and the Lantern finally comes through there. But Schernfire definitely making that one work. They didn't have position here where Robo is right now to stop something like that happening. When you have that siege going on in the mid, you have to protect your flanks from people coming over walls, snatching your teammates up.
And we were talking about the mechanical capabilities of Schernfire as a player, about how he was able to finish so highly on the Korean solo queue ladder when he was training over there. That flash body slam into the perfect angle on the cast to make sure you separated BRTT and tossed him right back into the heart of your team, it was all on point.
Yeah, a little bit of a misplay there from BRTT on positioning and timing with Dude. We talked about their synergy, but it was off, and Schernfire, big punish on it, and that totally gets Direwolves not just back in the game, but in a comfortable position where you can take team fights and feel okay with it.
Now they're still down 2K. They've still got to respect the fact that their opponents have had such an extraordinary lead up until this point, up until that last throw. But they have more of a way to fight against it now. Yeah. Hourglass also done for the Vladimir, so he's going to be that much harder to kill in these upcoming fights.
The big thing I'm seeing in these fights or throughout this game of these play-in teams is teleport not being used proactively and staying on cooldown, or I guess off cooldown, for a very long time without being used.
Chippy trying to get himself away. Flash going to be expended by Chippy's there to get away, but if he didn't flash, he was 100% dead, especially with Napon coming around from behind. 22 minutes in, Zyrene, and still no Drakes taken either. We normally make jokes about how nobody loves the Cloud Drake, and it just seems to be kind of left at the wayside, but this is extreme even for that.
Yeah. Somebody will take it eventually, I promise.
Maybe before 35 minutes.
You hope, so you can at least see if something else spawns.
Maybe something interesting.
Yeah, but Cloud Drake really hasn't been interesting enough or beneficial enough in these teams' minds to take it when there's so much to do. Direwolves are trying to, kind of stave off the aggression, and Red are trying to be constantly aggressive, and he's gonna step on it, waiting for the blast cone, gets over.
Robo gets himself out for
has
now.
Barely enough.
Not going to find its mark.
I think he barely, almost has enough for EQ. He just doesn't have it yet.
Gromp even trying to help
right
him. Robo looking to get himself away if he can. Golden Aegis barely keeping him alive. The crowd's happy to see it too.
That might be a Baron start here from the Direwolves soon.
Robo does have TP.
Well, BRTT's on bottom side of the map. You go Baron. Make the Baron call.
They're pinging it. They know right now BRTT has got to haul himself up here as fast as possible. Robo will look to get into the fight as soon as he can with the TP. TPing now up onto the position of the rest of his team. Baron not going down exceptionally fast, actually. The Direwolves going to be forced off of this one.
Oh, now they lose mid and bottom priority, and now they have to go tend to their waves. You actually have to take the back here. Dude might try to stop them. Oh, hit one.
Good hook onto Destiny. Forced to flash away, though.
Mid.
Napon stealing away the enemy red buff. Gonna grab 2 of those, one for him, one for his Thresh. As BRTT and Talkers are knocking on the front door, and they are not gonna let that sucker stand much longer. They break the base open.
Really good rotation there from Red. They put themselves in such a vulnerable position, having BRTT on the bottom side of the map. The Baron call from Direwolves seemed like the right call there. It just had to be made sooner. The fact that Robo got to back and got to TP means that that was definitely one that it was a little bit too late. They had that moment there as soon as they got Robo. And there's the CB
Look
Law.
at that! Robo letting them know what region he's from, telling them all about it as he gets himself out of trouble with yet another well-placed Dark Passage from Dude. We have seen so many saves from this guy this game. It's pretty clear between his death sentences and his Dark Passages why he loves playing this champion and why he's had such success with it.
Yeah, and not everybody gets to play Thresh at that competitive level and feel like it's a comfort champion for them, but this is one where he's been aggressive in lane, he's gotten that first blood, and then he's able to snowball and try to get other lanes ahead. Playing almost a flawless Thresh game so far. It's just his team playing around Lantern timings has been about it. The hooks that he's landing, quite good.
King now farming up in the top side, trying to become this massive long-range threat they need him to be if the Direwolves are going to find a win here. Still down over 3,000 gold. He's got the Runan's Hurricane and the basic Last Whisper completed. Runan's done as well for BRTT, but he's focusing more on raw damage, going for building an Infinity Edge over that Last Whisper first. Then again, he doesn't really have any heavily armored targets to have to shoot. I mean, the Olaf went for a Trinity Force into Spirit Vision.
Yeah, and that's what I think is the kind of the catalyst for this decision to go for the Infinity Edge, which I think is actually correct. He already has crit chance with the Runan's Hurricane. He has enough attack speed. He just needs that little more oomph behind it. And they didn't stack armor. They didn't have a gigantic tank threat. And even for Chippies, the fact that he saw, okay, looks like Jarvan's going for Tiamat into, okay, maybe Bombies, says there's not going to be enough armor on this enemy team. Ivern's not going to build much for a pretty long time. He'll get the Aegis, etc. But nobody else is really going to be stacking resist. So instead of Black Cleaver, goes for the Trinity Force, which has been completed for Chippies. He'll constantly get some Trinity Force procs, but he doesn't have that extra constant movement speed on physical damage, which is the Black Cleaver benefit.
Red Canids taking control over the mid lane for now, shoving out the wave, forcing their opponents off to the side. And remember, if Direwolves makes a misstep, gets somebody caught out and puts themselves in a bad spot, that inhibitor is open in mid lane and can always just be forced down if the opportunity presents itself to the Red Canids.
Yeah, looking for that opportunity. Shurnfire has the Body Slam flash.
BRTT remembers what happened last time. Has to be careful about that this time.
Look at this, they're giving up mid right now just to get that wave shoved in. Now they're gonna try to catch the wave. That's what you do when you're dancing for a Baron. Catch the mid wave, clear it faster, clear it on their side. Then you get to run in and you get to go and clear your jungle. You get to clear wards out. But now you can see Direwolves are actually ceding territory and making sure that they aren't completely caught out. It seems interesting, but nice from Chippy so far.
Chippy's gonna be stunned up. Robo makes his way into the fight, gonna be dark passaged out. The Flame Chompers prevent any further counterattack from the Direwolves.
Oh, there's Bicep flashing a dude!
Himself away. Dio's gonna be in some trouble. Talker's looking to lay down some damage. He's low on mana. Dio's gonna be blown up. Vantic, Talker's down. There comes your ace in the hole. A double kill for King. He's able to make it a triple almost. BRTT. They're on kill on Chippy's Destiny in the middle of the cage. Robo looking to lock him down. BRTT is going crazy as King's gonna be shot up and a triple kill. Not quite, a double instead for both the Jarvan and the Jinx. It's a 4 for 2, and the Red Canids find the fight.
That looked like it was gonna be devastating for the Direwolves. And look at that Shurnfire walk forward.
Shurnfire trying to potentially threaten to steal this away. Napon and BRTT, two-man taking this down.
Yeah, he has lifesteal, so BRTT can actually take some hits. Robo, not so sure about how many more he should be taking, but they are in that point where the smite should come through into the second.
Eventually.
What are you doing?
Oh, wait, come on. Okay, okay. We're gonna pretend that didn't happen because they had an awesome turnaround in that fight and they got the Baron.
Smite for HP, do something, man. It's not like anybody's gonna steal it over the wall. You have complete vision control over the right side of the wall.
You sound like a disappointed parent right now.
I am, man. But this was great from Shurnfire, but the cast, not the right angle to knock Dude into his team. Then you see Fantix go into the backline, Protobell onto Talkers. They get the kill on the Talkers with the ultimate, and then Chippy's in the backline. But why are you hitting the pond? Hit the Jinx, get on the Jinx. He flashes away. Then it was such a good ultimate there from Robo to put 3 people in there. Man, they were all under arrest. Robo Top's gonna have none of that today.
Robo Top was issuing some arrest warrants in there, trapping 3 different people in that cage, setting it up for the AoE from BRTT, who is now 3-1 and 3 on that Jinx. Infinity Edge completed. Hyper carry mode has been engaged.
Absolutely, 3 items done. You can see for King though, he doesn't have that crit scaling on himself. He went for the Last Whisper, he went for the heal reduction. Interesting, because you have not as many heals on Red Canids as, let's say, you have for an Olaf or a Gragas or a Vladimir. So you expect the Executioner's Calling to come through for BRTT soon, but it looks like he has something else in mind, possibly a QSS, to try and outplay some of the potential here from Direwolves to try and get back in the game.
By the way, that Cloud Drake we were talking about went down at 29 minutes and 5 seconds, which means it's literally the only Elemental Drake that's gonna spawn this game. Elders from here on out if the game lasts that long, but BRTT and the rest of the Canids looking to put a quick end to this one now that they've got this Baron buff, they've got the 5-man push. up here in the top side. Bush is going to be laid down, poke being applied. Just waiting for that next minion wave before they can put some more damage onto this tier 3.
And a top lane that was really silent for most of the game and had Chippies going pretty aggressive, getting himself killed in the tower dive, ends up being one of the big points of this game. Robo was pretty much left to his own devices in the top side of the map, but then ends up 3-0-3, pretty much the same scoreline as BRTT minus the death. And then you look at Chippies, who has the most deaths on the Direwolves team. He didn't get the type of advantage he was hoping for, and his snowball didn't work out with his attempts. And now we're in a situation where you have multiple lanes being pushed, and Robo in the mid.
Sternfire going to be caught out by the death sense. He has already expended the explosive cask, and that is a huge threat, no longer available.
Look at Robo in the bottom left-hand corner.
Robo's
He's drawing a
pulling
lot.
So much aggro right now.
Yeah, he drew so many people towards him. Lander
Sentence doesn't even need to be thrown out because Dark Passage keeps him alive, and he is safe yet again. The man is a master of escape. BRTT nap on the rest of the red Canids, still looking to pressure onto the T3 top side.
They can keep going because Robo has teleport. As soon as the next minion comes up, he might teleport into that area. See, he channeled it back just for fun there, just to see. Once they get the next minion wave up, you expect to teleport if they're going to continue to push.
This turret is very, very low. Remember, the one in mid lane is already down.
Right there. Robo hesitated. It looked like he wanted to go for the bottom wave. Instead, go for a TP. Hit the one that's being actually targeted by the turret. Try to get the turret.
A little bit more damage on that turret will do it.
They're trying to force.
Tier 3 down.
Nice.
Now what else can they find? Red Canids in an awesome power position right now to put their opponents in a very difficult to win situation. Taking down inhibitor number 1, might be able to grab 2.
Well, they got that inhibitor. Gigantic wave on the bottom side of the map. You need to set somebody back, and they won't have teleport. So you clear your mid wave that's pushing at you, and you clear your bottom. Red, pretty much going to be at like a 9,000 gold lead after they pick up these waves, because that is so much CS just waiting to be picked up here between that mid and the bottom.
And Baron buff expires right as they finally break the line, grab the turret, grab the inhibitor. They got exactly what they wanted out of that one.
And that's why that was that do or die situation. Do or die.
I know. Kind of fit in as well. I like that.
Accidents. No, actually, 100% intentional.
Yeah, totally intended.
Yeah, the do or die.
One like that, you just take it.
The do or dive situation. Do or dive situation where they had to force it there, or else it ends up being, okay, we reset. I don't know exactly how long it'll take before we get back here, clear out all these waves, but that's great timing for red. Now BRTT picks up the red buff courtesy of the Ivern. And now is in a spot where he has the last whisper, sitting on a null magic mantle just because. Looks like he said, okay, they have enough armor now. Now's the time. Direwolves, though, they had a lot of talk coming in about how they weren't really afraid of anybody and they were going to beat them. Game 1 does not look in their favor at all at the 33-minute mark.
These guys aren't even Koreans.
It's true. 4 Brazilians and an honorary Brazilian with Dude.
Red Canids in the enemy jungle, removing all the vision, taking control, making sure that they play this one slow and steady. Not exactly just looking to force up, run it down mid, take out the inhibitor, just choking the life out of the Direwolves. Reducing the area they control moment by moment, minute by minute.
And we're seeing some plays from Red all throughout this game that kind of signifies why CB Law has been such a strong region, right? INTZ was actually the #1 team at the end of the regular season, and then playoffs happened. So we're seeing and getting a glimpse of what it looks like in the CB Law region because they have some pretty good macro play. We saw a 3-man collapse on mid. We saw Dude go for roam plays. The Thresh Lanterns have been on point. Not saying there's a parallel for him in the CB Law as well, but I'm just saying that their macro game and their closing out of games seems to actually be pretty good. There's been some mistakes, but honestly, at the play-in level, those ones are going to fly, especially when you're that far ahead now.
With this massive gold lead that they're currently enjoying, they're looking to pressure onto the final tier 3 turret. Daisy going to be brought out, Sternfire going to be dragged back, bursted down, and taken out. A killing spree for BRTT as the Direwolves now stare down the barrel of a 4 versus 5. Inhibitor's going to be exposed at the very least. This will be a 3-hit game.
And Sternfire had yet to die on this team in this game. Everybody else had really kind of divvied up the gold, and he was the one who hadn't, but right there, it's kind of the tipping point at his wit's end of how much he can do in this game, whereas the game's just collapsing around him.
3 inhibitors down, almost impossible to come back from this. King gonna be taken low, Root Caller not finding its mark onto him. Robo pulled to safety yet again. And the Nexus turret's under siege as the Red Canids just pour damage into number one. BRTT having to back himself up. Fantix trying to go into the fight, but he's not going to be finding much of anything. Another cage is going to lock them down. As the rockets come out, they are flying, and everybody's dying. That's going to be GG for the hometown boys. Red Canids win the first game of MSI 2017. After they kill Sternfire.
Yep, just put a little addendum on there. There you go, one more time, there's the flare.
In unison flare. These guys not only know how to do it, Zyrene, they do it with style.
Definitely what you want to see from the CBLOL team that were predicted as favorites out of Group A. Starts off strong. They take down the OPL team Direwolves in Game 1. Get themselves off to a lead in front of that hometown crowd.
1-0 start for the Red Canids. The crowd goes wild for them. You heard them the entire time. Every time there was a big play, every time Robo got away or BRTT went off, the crowd was right there, and that has just got to feel electric for you, representing your team and representing your country like that.
I think that's one of the best words to describe it. It has to be an electric feeling there, being in front of that hometown crowd as the Brazilian team, because they had a great performance that game. The first blood with Dude moving on to the middle, having a 1v1 kill, I believe, with the Syndra, and then really just kind of snowballing the game and having a whole bunch of kind of collapsing of the map. And I like their rotations during the early parts where they were able to get some tier 2s, force tier 2s with Ivern and Jinx, and I think that the Ivern is going to be big in this tournament.
Red Canids definitely had themselves a good game, and to get their thoughts on the first game of the 2017 MSI play-ins, let's send things over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Game 1 in the books, and the Red Canids come out swinging here. A couple early kills, snowball into a quick and dominant lead for them. But before we get into the game itself, I want to start with Champion Select, because we talked about the 2 patches coming through, how priority might change, and immediately we've got things like the Jinx and the Thresh in the bot lane, which are not a part of the standard bot lane meta as it has been seen in the weeks leading up.
I feel like this is a part of having so many AD carries banned away. There were a couple of questions that we had, like, hey, if you're the Red Canids and you're going to ban away the Varus and the Ashe, why would you not put more value on the AD carry? And the fact that they put themselves in a bit of a difficult bottom lane, or one would expect it to be difficult, because when you have a melee support like Thresh with a low-ranged AD carry in the form of Jinx, and you go up against a Caitlyn Lulu, expectations are you're just going to get pushed under tower all day, you're going to have a really struggling time.
And to be honest, we were taken a little off guard by that, because the expectation was that they would put a lot of resources into the bot lane, you know, putting resources into BRTT and expecting him to carry with perhaps a winning lane. But instead, they opt to go on the back foot, prioritizing picks like Syndra in the mid lane and the Ivern first pick in the jungle, as we talked about the jungle meta evolving.
Right, and I think it's the kind of thing where sometimes you say, okay, you're our star player, but we don't need to necessarily pick around you. You'll be fine. You'll, just hang on. We'll get you anything that you can get. You'll be fine. And we're going to put some more resources maybe on the top side where they give the Jarvan pick over, like, kind of last pick blind, which we were talking about, and there's some discussion about, like, he's more of a tank player. Why is he on the Jarvan? I think it came down to, that the top side for Direwolves likes to play some crazy champions. So Jarvan, though he is kind of a carry matchup, is one of the more stable ones. He can be hard to abuse. He always has his range farming tools. He has a lot of escapes. So I kind of like the idea out of Red Canids here to basically say, all right, BRTT, you'll be fine. We're going to focus a little bit more on the top side.
And while we talk about both of these teams being aggressive teams, the Direwolves here drafting a composition that should give them plenty of priority in the early game to make plays, right? We're looking at a Lulu Kate bot lane of all things, is one of the most oppressive bot lanes out there in the current meta, as well as a proactive jungler like Gragas and a pusher like Olaf. It feels, at least the way the Champion Select is working out, the expectation should be that Direwolves have control or have the ability to dictate the early game.
Yeah, you would expect that when you have Olaf into Jarvan, you have pushing lane top. When you have Caitlyn Lulu bot, you have pushing bot. And while Vladimir into Syndra early on will struggle, it'll get to a point once he's done his first base where he actually does fine in that lane. So in theory, you've got 3 pushing lanes in the favor of the Direwolves, and then you've also got a composition that suits their style perfectly with the 1-3-1. This is the style that has given them so much success in their own region. The only thing that they could possibly do wrong is die in their own lane. That is the only condition with which things could go horribly wrong. And unfortunately for them,
they went horribly wrong.
That is exactly
what horribly wrong. We had an early kill in the bot lane.
Yeah,
we have these replays as well. We've got the early kill in the bot lane, followed by over-aggression in the top lane as well. That'll net a kill.
And so people talk about how oppressive Lulu Caitlyn is, but it's not an all-in lane. If you ever get all-in with this lane, 3-6, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
And this, of course, is brought to you by Acer, our first Acer replay of the tournament. We'll have those for you throughout. But again, this hyper-aggression, right? We talk about Direwolves having confidence coming into the tournament, only looking at the Korean teams. Well, if you're going to get to the Korean teams, you've got to get through these ones, and you can't excuse those minor mistakes that hand the game over so early.
Especially when you're picking Olaf and this Lulu Kate, like we talk about both those being good, strong lanes, but they're both lanes also that if they die early or start falling behind, they become pretty much useless. A Caitlyn from behind building Blade of the Rune King, not going to do much. They start getting pushed in by the Jinx Thresh. That's when you know the game has completely flipped on its head, and that's the problem for this draft for them. While even in the mid game we saw some decent stuff, they were just way too far behind.
I wonder if nerves was a part of this, right? Because I feel that getting hit by a Thresh hook is not something that you would expect normally in your own region necessarily, and up in the 1v1, you get a lot of damage down, you evaluate the situation and go, hey, if I was back home, I'd be able to get that kill. Maybe I go for it, maybe I just take the gamble. But the reality is they got punished more than I feel they were expecting. And the fact that the Red Canids very effectively used their lead after they were able to get it, because they took mid at 10 minutes, they took 2 towers in the bottom lane. These guys were snowballing fast and efficiently, and this is the sort of position that the Red Canids like to be in.
I think that's the big thing too, is we even saw that one time Talker's made his way down to the bot lane, got picked off for it, getting a little out of sync with his team. But the idea was there, and you see that Red Canids knows that once they have an advantage, how to use it, because as soon as their bot lane started having priority over what should be a winning bot lane for Direwolves, they started trying to punish it over and over.
It also sets up the day in a very interesting way, right? Because now the rest of the teams in the group have to react to this as they push through the rest of the day, recognizing that, hey, the Red Canids didn't opt for a winning bot lane, and yet they were still able to pull through and get that Jinx to a point where she could take over the game. On the flip side, the Direwolves, they now have to recover, right? They've got to be able to either shake off this loss and say, hey, we're willing to run it back. We have confidence in running compositions like this, and it was just execution, failure in execution, or we need to completely rethink our strategy and how we're going to approach this day of best of one.
I mean, I don't think you can start doubting yourself right now. Even though, you know, it sucks to come out on a loss, it's a long group stage that they're going to be playing in here, a long day ahead of them as well right now. So if you start doubting your kind of play style at the first moment things don't work out, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I think even though you can say, oh, maybe this wasn't quite right, I think the idea behind what they're going for is totally in line with what we saw of them coming into this tournament, and you can't start veering off that path already.
And the bright side of this as well, in theory, they've gone up against the favorites of the group, right? Red Canids, expectations were that this was the strongest team in Group A, and you just got defeated by them through your own small minor mistakes.
Exactly.
So you can still be confident in the fact that you're still yet to see Supermassive and Rampage play. There's still room for you to grow, and there's still another 5 games for you to pick up those wins.
All right, the tough one's out of the way. It's time to bounce back. I want to take a look at the game-breaking team fight. 27 minutes in. This will be a 4-for-2 in favor of the Red Canids, but off of, you know, aggression from Direwolves. Once again, looking for that pick, looking for the successful team fight. To me, a lot of this was target selection here by Direwolves that could have been better.
I mean, when you're playing against the Jinx, killing the support early on, not really the best idea. You see BRTT, excuse me, basically untouched over the course of this fight. As soon as he gets a little bit of attention, he flashes out, resets, repositions, and starts going back in once people start dropping, able to turn this fight around. And it's nice to see Sure and Fire able to engage and start a team fight, just not on the right target.
And for me, 2 of the star players that we saw in this game and in that fight in particular were both Dude and Robo. Because Robo was getting some fantastic ultimates. Not only did he get that great 1v1 outplay, and while he was overextending a couple times throughout the game, he made a lot of decisive plays in a lot of these big fights. And Jude, he soaked up a lot of the damage, and even though he was the first one to die, he was always getting all of his abilities out, and he was always doing exactly what he needs for his team, setting up his AD carry to be the superstar, to get all those kills and run away with the team fight. So I feel like you're seeing the strength of Red Canid's ability to fight in these 5v5 scenarios.
Exactly, and as you mentioned, them probably being considered the favorites in the group, start hot here with a first victory over the Dire Wolves. The question again is, how will these teams respond to what is developing throughout the day? They're going to have a short break here, being able to watch Supermassive and Rampage go up against each other, and then it's all about how you adjust throughout the day. We talk about evolving metas in best of fives. There's also an evolving meta in a group stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but over the course of the weekend, you'll start seeing trends emerge. Maybe now people know, okay, Red Canids love Ivern. If we have any priority on Ivern now, we need to change how we were going to approach this team.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see if Red Canids can carry this momentum from Game 1 into the rest of their games in the play-in stage. But before we see them again, we've got to take a quick break. When we return, TCL Supermassive take to the stage against LJL's Rampage. Don't go anywhere.
MSI 2017. Should be an interesting show between these two teams. This is fun, man.
I love it. It is definitely risky. And against the Jarvan who can lock you up and then run away, we'll see here.
Chippy's trying to start this off and make
the
it
shield!
Damage comes into the shield's gonna keep him alive. BRTT, they're the kill on Chippy's Destiny in the middle of the cage. Robo looking to lock him down. BRTT is going crazy as King's gonna be shot up. Trying to go into the fight, but he's not gonna be finding much of anything. Another cage is gonna lock this down. The rockets come out, they are flying and everybody's dying. That's gonna be GG for the hometown boys. Red Canids win the first game of MSI 2017.